a song for you.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, here, nearing the end of season 11, covering the songs of Come Taste the Band. This is episode 9, doing kind of a dual song that's really one song. It's really not, but it really is. This is This Time Around an Ode to G. Not only that, but this is episode 100 of the podcast. So yay to making it to episode 100. With me for this very special episode is my good friend from the Deep Purple Podcast, Nathan Beaudry. Nathan, how are ya?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm sorry I didn't get you like a present or something. I didn't realize it was 100 episodes.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've actually recorded like 161, but we're at 100, 100 at this point. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. You guys launched, was it episode 385 last night, I think, of the Deep Purple Podcast?
320 something.
320 something. That's still a lot of podcasts, considering how few actually make it to 10. Because I think people get really excited at the idea, and then they find out how much work it is to make it, to promote it every week or however often your show is. And then they're like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this.
I think they also run out of subject matter.
Oh,
you have to. That was the whole point of us picking Deep Purple. We knew that basically we would never run out of things that we couldn't tie into the band. Mm-hmm. And certainly there are things we've covered that people would argue we very tentatively tied into the band. But for the most part, I think just about every episode we've had, you can make a maybe weak case, but still a case that it's related to Deep Purple.
I would agree with that. And then you've done some really creative episodes that I was happy to be a part of, like the Deep Purple Game Show, for example, which was a lot of fun. This week, though, you covered one of my favorite all-time albums. I would say, you know, if I was forced to pick a top 10 albums of all times that made me happy, one of them would be Michael Schenker, Assault Attack, and that is your episode this week. Everybody should go check that out. Links to your show are in the show notes, and man, I really enjoyed that episode. So glad you guys enjoyed the album as much as you did.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it a lot on the episode, but it's recent discovery for us. Mm-hmm. So, recent being within the last few years, and I'm sure if we had the history with it, maybe that you do, or if we discovered it as teenagers, we would probably put it on our top 10 list too, because I could see having, if you took an album of that quality and then combined it with like the nostalgia factor, it's, mm-hmm. I mean, it's great stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely. And it is an album that I've had since I was a teenager. I want to say I probably got it in 85 or 86. Sounds about right to me. So I was still in Michigan, and you know, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have the ability to just easily look up the band history and find out, oh, let's see all the albums Grant Bonnet's done so I can collect those. And I don't know how we stumbled across Michael Schenker. It might have been through that Rainbow or Deep Purple connection, but man, an artist that I'm definitely heavily influenced by those first few albums. And then like most bands, just kind of dropped off for me. And but Deep Purple is the one band that I've never lost interest in. You know, even Uriah Heep, for a time, like I knew their older catalog, and then I just kind of stopped until I decided to do the podcast. I'm like, there's all these albums I haven't even heard yet. You know, mm-hmm. Whitesnake, I kind of lost interest in after Slip of the Tongue because I didn't like the direction they were going in. But Purple's the one band that I've just never stopped.
Yeah, John and I sort of did, and the kind of part of the premise of the show was getting back into it and saying, let's give a critical listen to those albums that happened after we kind of moved on, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And getting to know, like, we both had a history with Perpendicular, but for me, it was that after that point, I was just working so much and everything that I wasn't listening to a lot of music, and I
Mhm.
just kind of went in my own direction. And then I was like, well, I liked Perpendicular a lot. So let's pick up where we left off and cover the old stuff that we absolutely love, pick up where we left off. And it's been a great journey getting to know the Steve Morse albums that we kind of missed out on and
Right.
see them continue on beyond that.
Right. And I would also add Rainbow would be the other band that I only stopped because they stopped.
Yeah.
you know, when Stranger in Us All came out, I went and got that immediately. And well, I guess you could say the Ronnie Romero singles I heard and I was like, yeah, I don't even need to buy these because I just not into this at all.
Yeah, I think, well, like, you're a few years older than John and I,
Mhm.
but it makes a big difference because at that time, when at the age that we were at, like, you just didn't see, like, I don't remember ever seeing UFO or
Right.
Michael Schenker or anything like that. Like, I think it would have been in the record stores when it was more contemporary and maybe a few years after that, but I think they'd kind of moved on, cleared out their inventory, and
Right.
in the United States anyway, it
Mhm.
wasn't they weren't easy to find in like the late 80s, early 90s, and probably a little bit easier in the early to mid 80s. So it just kind of like was a blind spot for us because we just never really got exposed to it. Or maybe if
Mhm.
we'd had that one friend that had an older brother with it in their record
Yeah.
collection, maybe it could have opened a door for us, but that door just didn't get open until we just started forcing ourselves to really go out there and check out all the stuff from the extended family.
Well, and I feel too like in the 80s we had bigger record stores because that was the norm for purchasing before CDs, and
Yeah.
you could have a smaller store and just as much inventory. Then when vinyl goes out, the best is, okay, we've got a small space, let's open a record store, and you don't get to have the selection. But in the 80s, I think of the store that I used to go to was Harmony House, which was a chain, and that place was huge. I mean, it wasn't Target, but it was, I would say, bigger than a convenience store. And you also didn't have as many bands, so you had the ability to have a more of their catalog.
Yeah, we would take like once a month or something. Our buddy Paul's dad would drive us up to Boston, and we would go to the Tower Records in Boston, which was like 3 levels and had a lot of stuff. But you bring
Wow,
up an
yeah.
interesting point. I think when they kind of, you didn't see records anymore in the record store.
Hmm.
Despite my friend Paul's dad, he was on a one-man crusade to call CDs records. Never caught on,
Yeah.
but he was like, I'm calling them records. But I think when you cleared out your old inventory of whatever, UFO or Michael Schenker or whatever, you didn't replace it with the CD version because by that point it was like all hair metal and
Right.
stuff like that. So you're
Yeah.
not going to replace it with a record album or CD version of a 1982 album. You're probably going to replace it with the the latest Motley Crue or whatever. And being in the States, they didn't have as much pull, so they probably just kind of flushed those out of their collection. Now you go and it's basically all records. You rarely see CDs.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, cassettes, they tried to do a little comeback with cassettes that I thought was pretty silly because how many people have a cassette player anymore?
I honestly think that the return to vinyl is pretty silly, but cassettes is just like, dude, no. Like, I can understand from a nostalgia standpoint going back to vinyl and having the original thing, but cassette, no. That format should be just forgotten as easily as possible. It was a horrible format.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody benefited from it. It sounded terrible. It was inconvenient.
Yeah.
Expensive to produce. Like, just terrible.
Yeah, I think the thing is, it's more for me, obviously the fact that I was kind of forced to give up my collection. So it's more of a taking back that power and getting my records back than anything else. But I do enjoy, and I don't listen to music that much right now either. I'm too busy between podcasting and composing.
Too busy talking about music.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't drive. So, I mean, other than walking places where a lot of times I'm listening to podcasts, I just don't have the opportunity to listen to music that I used to. But it is nice every once in a while to be able to just look at an album cover and read the lyric sheet and, just take a little time and experience music the way I knew it growing up. But speaking of, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just, I was just thinking about some of the, I'm been fortunate enough to get some of the records I've ordered specifically because I knew I was going to meet somebody and I could get it
Oh yeah.
autographed. So
Mhm.
it's nice from like a collector's piece. But yeah, I did for a brief time have a record player set up in the living room upstairs, which I need to set back up. And the kids did enjoy it when they were younger because they maybe didn't have the access to the technology and stuff. So it
Right.
was something like tactile they could put on and put the needle down and learn how to play the music. So they're actually clamoring for me to set it back up. So I should set my player back up.
Nice. Or my other favorite thing that you do is you just carry around your albums and don't get them signed.
Yes. I have albums that have hung out with Don Airey and Roger Glover, but never been signed because I
Yeah.
just didn't feel like I'm sure they would have signed them. I was like, I'm not feeling it. I don't want to ruin the flow of the conversation. So
Well,
this guy can sign
it's
it.
weird. Like you get to sit down and have conversations with these people, and then all of a sudden you're like, I kind of feel like a just an average fan, but could you sign my merch? It kind of almost makes you feel like you're degrading that experience by fanning it
Yeah.
again. You know?
Yeah, that's I never really kind of thought about it that way, but you're right. Like it just I don't know. To me, it's like you gotta kind of feel the moment. Like if other people were bringing stuff out, and you say,
Yeah.
okay, so we're doing one of those things.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was just like, well, why would I want to ruin this great moment just so I can have another thing autographed by Roger Glover when I'm here talking to him? That's something I can't replace. I could actually go on eBay and get probably this album autographed by Roger Glover for $60. If I
Right.
really wanted
Yeah.
it that bad, I could do that. But I could not. How many other opportunities am I going to have to actually interact?
Right. I see. I've never understood. I guess if you're a collector, you can collect whatever, whether it's salt and pepper shakers, vinyl, autographs, whatever it is. But to me, the idea of an autograph is the experience of meeting the person more than
Yes.
anything else. Like they just had the Mad Monster, which is a sort of a meet and greet for horror celebrities in Arizona. And
Hmm.
Tracy Lords was there, and one of my friends went to meet her and ask her questions at a screening that they did. And Danielle Harris was there, and it's like you go to get the autograph to meet people. Like when I met Linda Blair there a few years ago, like I didn't care about the autograph. You buy the picture because they're there to make money and interact.
Yeah.
So you do the proper thing and pay them for the experience. But it was more just like meeting her and talking to her and everything. I don't get the idea of sending people something to have autographed because you're not meeting
Mm.
them. To me, it's more
Yep.
about the experience, I guess, than the physical property.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do it just so they can have something of value to sell either immediately or
Mhm.
later.
Right.
But to me, it's more of it's a memento, it's a memory of that experience. And to me, I would take a picture with the person 1,000 times over an autograph to say,
Yeah.
"Hey, here's me and Roger Glover together,"
Yeah, like
or
we got some great pictures with Roger. We got one with Don Airey, which was really nice. And kind of wish I'd have sauntered over to Simon when he got freed up from
yes,
his
yeah.
guest. I feel kind of bad that I didn't, but it was like, well, we had a pass to meet Roger, so I'm not really sure if it was like, yeah, you could talk to them if they're out there, or you really
Mhm.
shouldn't if you don't have a pass to meet them. Like, there's really no etiquette out laid out. But with Don, I was like, well, I had a specific request from Graham and Beth and me to go say hi to Don, so I felt okay
Yeah.
doing that one. They didn't know Simon, so I didn't have that in to be able to do that. But it is
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
weird to say, hey, here's a pen, can I profit off of you?
Yeah, exactly. Could you give me something that you're gonna immediately increase in value for me?
Right. Like the first time I met Roger, he did sign my abandoned tour book, which was nice. But of course, there's
Mhm.
there's so much color on that thing, you can't really see what he wrote anyway.
Right, right,
That was
yeah.
kind of a weird tour. Like they should have a page in a tour book to, I guess, maybe allow for that kind of thing, like a white back of a last page or something like that. Um, but the experience of me just like getting to talk to him and hang out with him and hear what he had to say and all that. And of course, we got the inside scoop on the Rapture of the Deep remix and remaster before that was public knowledge, so that was really nice. And we're a month and a half away from getting that, which is pretty exciting.
Did we get that scoop?
Yeah, he said he was working on it, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, we talked about it. And he said he was really excited. It was coming along well, and he was overseeing it, I think, is how he explained
Oh,
it,
okay.
because he was obviously on tour, so he couldn't be in the studio working on it. So
See that?
Yeah.
It should be like, could I record this conversation so I remember everything? I remember the stupid stuff about Barbie Benton,
Oh
but I
yeah.
don't remember the Rapture the Deep remix.
Yeah. Yeah. There was so, and it was just 2 nights in a row. And by the second night, of course, the whole, drive to Chicago and being up all day and then going to the show. And then by the time I got to the airport, I was just like, I am so glad I'm not behind the wheel of a vehicle. I have 4 hours before my flight. I can just sit here and just space out for a little while. And then they kept changing the airplane. I think they changed it 4 times. So I had to keep moving gates. Like, I just want to go to bed.
Yeah, I know. Two back-to-back shows, 5 hours apart. And I was ready to collapse. And I'm like, these guys that are almost 80 are doing this nonstop. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about today's song. We're covering this time around an ode to G, as it was
Yes.
on the CD version. Now, I do not have the remix and remaster version. I'm working off the original CD. On the original CD, they were as one track, so they were considered by the engineer, the record company, or whoever split it as one track. Why did you choose this one to cover on the show, Nate?
Well, listeners to our podcast may or may not know that this is my favorite Deep Purple song of all time.
Even over Mary Long.
Even over Mary Long. Yes, this is to me, which is, if somebody was looking to get into Deep Purple, I wouldn't be like, this is the song you got to listen. This
Right,
symbolizes exactly what the band's all about, because it does it. It's
right.
very different from almost everything else they've ever done. But there's something about this song that resonates so much with me, and we'll get into it, I guess, when we cover it. But that's why I despite everything I have going on, I was like, I have to be there for this song, because I feel like I would do myself a disservice if I didn't, because I've never done we've never done just an episode on just this song. We've covered it on the album. We've covered the live performance a couple times, but couple different versions, but we've never did like a deep dive into the song. And I view it as being one song too. They did split it into 2 separate tracks on the 35th anniversary release, which is just, it's a formality. It doesn't really change, but they do flow into one another, even though the 2 halves are completely, could not be more different. I feel like they flow into each other in a way that, like, you couldn't listen to just Polythene Pam off of Abbey Road and just be like, okay, I'm going to listen to something else now. It's like, you have to listen to that whole medley as one thing. And I feel like there's so many songs like that, and this is one of them where I can't just listen to this time around and say, okay, time to wrap it up. Like, these 2 mirror each other, or not mirror, but complement each other so well.
I actually did a cover of Polythene Pam years ago. That song is so much fun.
Of just Polythene Pam?
I can't remember if I did the whole medley or just Polythene Pam, but I remember specifically.
I'm sure you could do it in a way that it was just that and it would work, but each one of those songs is only about a minute long. So.
Yeah. Well, it didn't take me long. I think where it does matter on the split would be if you're buying the digital copy or if you're ripping the CD. If your rip puts a divide, because sometimes it'll automatically put in a 2-second gap. Yeah. So if you're getting that gap between this time around and Ode to G, it doesn't work as well because it doesn't actually flow in. There's like a stop that takes you out of the flow of the song. So I would say in that case, it does matter. If you're just listening to the CD, they probably didn't put that in. And so it probably rendered to where they just put in a file ID in the middle without the gap. But as soon as you rip it, now you're going to have that gap or that stop in between the 2 while it loads the next track. And that does split it up a little bit.
I know some of the earlier players, or it might have been even like iTunes, it would have like a little stutter, like just a little split second between the tracks. I hated that, especially, like I said, listening to Abbey Road. The whole second half of the album is just infuriating to listen to. Just stutters between all these things, because you consider them to be one piece of music. And the other thing that I don't remember if it was iTunes or some other player I used to have, it would default to doing like a crossfade.
Oh.
And it was so annoying. Like, nobody wants to I mean, you just want to listen to the album that you know so well, the way it was
Yeah.
intended to be released. And most Deep Purple albums, it didn't. You wouldn't even really notice it because there's just a song and then a song and then so there's not a lot of songs in the Deep Purple catalog that are like this one that blend from one into the other.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few on the more recent albums,
Right. Yeah.
but not a ton in the catalog. But there's some artists that do it constantly.
Mm-hmm.
But they try listening to like a Pink Floyd album or like I said, Abbey Road, and it's maddening.
Well, there's a reason we stopped using 8 tracks, right? I mean,
yes,
it doesn't, that format just doesn't work to have it stop in the middle. And I remember I had whatever album Yes did that Worm was on, which was my favorite Yes song. And I got to hear them from backstage play that at both shows and heard like 3 seconds of it. I'm like, I don't care. I'm talking to Roger Glover. And, but I had the 8 track of it, and it did the same thing. Like right when the song's getting good, it flips tracks, and you're waiting that 3 second gap or whatever it was, And I'm like, it just takes me right out of the moment,
Yeah, it's terrible. My buddy had like a lot of the Beatles albums on cassette, and they would like balance the cassette so you didn't have to fast forward at the end to get to the next side. So the 2 sides were the same length.
Mm-hmm.
And it just messed with the whole track order. And it would be, and even on the earlier albums, like say Rubber Soul or Revolver, you're just so used to that track order, and it was all messed up. And just, I don't know. That's one thing to me. And they did that on the 35th anniversary of this album, which is the only thing about it that I mean, they put both versions in, which is fine, but the remix, they messed with this track order, and David Coverdale does that all the time with his. It's like, man, of all the things to mess with, don't mess with the track order.
Well, yeah, I mean, as I had recorded the album Abandoned, because I'm obviously a bit ahead, I did find some issues with the track order that I'm like, this is interesting that they put these songs that are similar in this way, in this order, and I'll get to that when I get to that season. But wasn't there something with Equals One where the night that the first single came out, I remember we jumped on, we did a quick podcast about it. Mm-hmm. And there was something about the order being different, the way it flowed in from one song to another. Like, it doesn't work if you split it into a single and you don't fade the song out or end the song in a way that makes sense. There was something, I remember there was something weird about that. I can't remember quite what it was off the top of my head.
Pictures of You ended the way that they were ordering it on Spotify. Pictures of You ended, and I think like it went right into Portable Door or something. But on the album, it goes right into I'm Saying Nothing, which to me seems normal now, but at the time it was jarring because you were so used to they were releasing the singles, but then not putting them in the order that they released them in the Spotify playlist.
Gotcha.
So it was like, and it worked both ways because it's just a very abrupt change into the next song.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when you become used to expecting that one song to be next and it's not, it kind of throws you for a loop.
Yeah, at least when they had Whoosh and they released Man Alive, it didn't all of a sudden come in from Remission Possible. They kind of faded the song in a little bit, and it gave you that separation to where it was okay as a single. But yeah, it does get a little weird when you're releasing a song that blends in, but you're only releasing one of the songs. And it definitely throws everything off. But fortunately, we have a perfectly intact song to listen to today. Let's check it out. I have to say, Nate, too, this is definitely one of my favorites. I also would not say this is a song you need to check out if you're just getting into the Deep Purple catalog, because I don't think it's necessarily, it's like Our Lady. It's a song that I love, but it's not one that I would say is representative of the typical Deep Purple track.
Yeah, if you love this song and are expecting a band that's just cranking out songs like this nonstop, you're going to be disappointed. Right. And if you don't like this song but would have liked Deep Purple, you'll miss out on a lot of stuff. So if you take away anything from this, if for some reason you're listening to this podcast and yet this is the first time you hear the song, don't form your opinion on Deep Purple based on it, either for good or bad.
Yeah, it's like you could say that about Mark 1 because Mark 1 was so incredibly different from Mark 2. It's almost like a different band completely. There are obviously certain similarities on writing style and the musicians and all that, but they really didn't define. It was like the first three albums were somewhat searching for who they wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And then by the time they get to In Rock, they're like, oh, this is who we are, and sit back because it's going to kick your ass.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's see what John Lord had to say about this song.
Right.
I was improvising at the piano in the studio on my own. A little sequence that I'd found that pleased me, and I was just working away on it, see what I could make of it. I couldn't see how in a month of Sundays it could become a Deep Purple song, but I was messing around. And unbeknownst to me, Glenn had been listening. And I got up to leave after having been messing around for about 20 minutes on this piece. Glenn came rushing in. He used to call me Dougie, well, in a sort of West Midlands accent. Which I won't attempt to recreate, but Dougie, what's that? I said, something I'm messing around with. He said, let me have it for 5 minutes, let me have it. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I can do something really brilliant with this. So we put a little version of it down on 2-track. He went away for 10 minutes, came back with the words for this time around, and pretty much the vocal as it was recorded.
And I think around this time, before I was sent home in September, I knew that my life was going to hell. Not as a musician, as a person. Let's just say that song was my centerpiece, as Holy Man was my centerpiece on Stormbringer. I wanted to let people know how I was as a singer and a writer, and that sums it up.
Tommy then came in and said, hey, I got this, I'm doing accents here. He said, I got this little instrumental riff, which is the same tempo as what you guys have just done with this time around. And I said, well, then why don't we, stick them together? So it did, and it worked. That's why it goes from this time around into the Ode to June.
Dougie the Impressionist.
Dougie. Makes me think of... at the end of spoilers, the end of Austin Powers, the last one, when they realize Dr. Evil is actually Austin Powers' brother.
Oh, I haven't seen it. Yeah.
His name is Dougie, and Michael Caine is like, Dougie.
Oh, Michael Caine! I wonder what size house he bought with the money from that movie.
Yeah. Probably a slightly smaller. Actually, probably did pretty good for that movie. But
that was his big thing about doing Jaws: The Revenge, because it's like such a horrible movie, is that he bought a house.
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
Yeah.
But I think there's something about this, like songs that are just kind of patched together. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I always really love stuff like that. That just is like, oh, why don't we put this? And like I referenced the Abbey Road medley earlier. Same thing. 4 songs we had lying around that we'd never even really finished. Mm-hmm. Just had a little verse chorus and never had a full arrangement for us. Just stick them all together and put on the end of the album. And for them, it was probably just like, whatever, we got to finish this album, just get it on there. But for me, it was such a important song to me growing up and listening to. And it's the same thing with this. It's the same thing with the song Dogs by Pink Floyd is my favorite Pink Floyd song. And it's just like 2 different songs just stuck together.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about that works so well. And I think it's just that it's something a little different, that it's not just this verse chorus thing. It makes it into more of like it makes it a little more theatrical in a way.
It makes it more of a journey. You feel like you've experienced something, I think, a little bigger when you've been taken on a bigger ride. And I agree. I mean, those are typically songs that I tend to gravitate towards, because you do get a lot more out of it. You get a song, you get the parts of that song. You get a combination song, you're getting a combination of all those parts. And it's a lot more to pick out, to enjoy, and to listen to. As a side note, speaking of Michael Caine, if any of you guys that are listening are interested, since this will actually air in a couple of days from when we're recording, Mark Roback from the 70s Weekly Podcast and I did 8 hours in reviewing the 50th anniversary of Jaws. Could not believe how in depth we went into this movie, how much we found to talk about. The podcast is 4 times the length of the movie, which is Pretty amazing. But, we were talking and talking, and then we realized we were at the end of Act 1, which is about halfway through the movie, and we'd been recording for 4 hours. And I'm like, holy crap, this is pretty wild. And it took us about the same length to discuss the second half of the movie. So if you're interested, that's out there on the Haskincast podcast. Go check that out. That was a lot of fun, though. Mark is a great guy. We've been on the Deep Purple podcast together. Really enjoyable. And I was also recently on this month on the 70s Weekly Countdown with Mark and Pete. So
yes, yeah. fun episode. And the Jaws episodes are great. And I like how you started off like, well, what's the plan? How should we talk about this? I don't know. Let's just start talking about it. And then it's like 2 hours later. It's like, okay, on to part 2.
Yeah, well, it kind of makes sense to do things chronologically, right? Like on your show, you don't skip around songs. You start at the beginning of the album and you go to the end of the album, or concert footage or whatever. So I mean, it does kind of make sense to do it chronologically. But we hadn't really talked about how we were going to do it. We just kind of jumped in, and then all right, well, let's just go scene by scene. Still trying to figure out why Mrs. Kittner's character is so old and why she has an 8-year-old boy. That does seem a very odd casting, because it wasn't a role that took a lot of technical expertise or anything to do,
Yeah, they could have found a younger.
Yeah.
Especially for the mid 70s, you'd think that. Did you figure out how old the actress would have been when it was?
No, I didn't.
Sometimes people just look a lot older than they were, especially going back 50 years.
I did.
Like,
I did
look
think
at that
about
old
that.
guy. He's like 27.
But I think what Mark pointed out too was that the guy that escorts her when she's in her black veil to go slap Brody, he looks even older than her, and it's like, well, is that her husband? Is that her father? Like, who are these people? It was an odd choice, I have to say, but an amazing movie. Mark, after we did the Roy Gallagher episodes, Mark approached me and goes, what do you think about doing Jaws? I'm like, no hesitation. I'm like, yeah, that's my favorite movie. Let's dig in. And boy, did we. 8 hours of podcasting about any one subject. You wouldn't think it's possible, but how many hours have we done now?
She was 46 in 1975.
Okay, so I mean, it's not unheard of to have a baby in your late 30s, but not common. I mean, not so
common in that time, unless it was like she had like a bunch of grown children, and then there was one, another bonus child that came.
Yeah,
which is not uncommon.
Right. Very possible. But for a movie selection, it's kind of odd to target that, as opposed to going with something a little more standard, saying she was in her late 20s or early 30s. Yeah. Kind of an odd choice. But anyway,
she 46 in 1975. Like looking at the picture of her, thinking this woman's younger than me, just doesn't really compute.
Yeah, you look a lot younger than that, honestly.
You don't have to say that.
No, you really do. You look very young.
You're just saying that.
No, Nate, I've got you on the show. I don't have to sell you at this point.
Yeah, but I could just hang up immediately.
That's true. But I'm not trying to date you. Otherwise, I would expect that to happen. So John is not done, though. We have a little bit more from him. Let's see what else he had to say about this whole situation.
All right.
The best thing one can say about Come Taste the Band is that if you listen to it now, it's a surprisingly good album. It's terrifically well put together. And the worst thing you can say about it, and it's not that bad, is that in most people's opinion, it's not a Deep Purple album, but it makes a terrifically good rock album. The fact that it was made at all at that time is fairly remarkable, considering that Richie had left and that Tommy was a compromised musician. And very shortly after, sadly, not that long, he was dead. So, it's important to remember that the circumstances in which it was made.
Yeah, I've heard him say in some interviews that he felt it wasn't a Deep Purple album, but then he, I think when the anniversary edition came out, he sat down and listened to it objectively. He enjoyed it again. I think you have to understand from his perspective, living through the frustrations of dealing with Tommy's addiction, dealing with the situation that Glenn was in, having to send somebody home from the band when you're recording an album is a pretty difficult choice, because you're saying we're making a record of a document of who we are as a band right now, and you're so messed up, you can't be a part of all of it. That's a huge decision to make. So you think about what he's associating with this album, thinking this is not how we make an album. This is not how we represent ourselves as a band. it's probably a little difficult to just look at the music and say, here's what the document is, despite all the problems. You have to get away from it for a while to be able to do that. And this interview came out when they were doing, I think it was around the time they were doing Phoenix Rising. So this was, much separated from the recording of the album, and at a point where he was obviously able to look at it a little more objectively. My argument, Nate, has always been if an album comes out and it's under the band's name, it's the band's album. I don't care how much of a departure it is. I don't care how experimental it is. If the band released it, it's the band's album. What do you think?
Oh, same thing. I have nothing but love for John Lord. He's like a god to me, but I wish he had never said that, because all I've heard is people echo that since whenever this was recorded.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, it's, they present it like it's their own opinion, which pisses me off, because it's a great album, but it's not a deeper. Yeah, you heard John Lord say that.
Right.
Give me a break.
Right. Yeah.
And I understand the idea that it sounds different, because especially at this point, you're only dealing with John and Ian from the original lineup, and neither one of them were contributing much on a writing standpoint at this point, except the song, ironically.
Right.
But I don't know. I feel the same way, because it's like, if all you knew of the Beatles was the first 2 or 3 albums, and then you fast forwarded to even say Revolver or whatever. I mean, you could say, if Revolver was like the last Beatles album, or even Rubber Soul, you say, it's a good album, but it's not a Beatles album. It's supposed to be just the 4 guys and their instruments and the harmonies, and none of this like sitar and horns and things like that. You know what I mean? But like, this is the progression from where they were headed. Had Glenn and Tommy been in a clear headspace and healthy, who knows where this would have grown to, and what would the early 80s have been like for Deep Purple if they had just continued going on? What other lineup changes could there have been? But I think there's too many bad memories associated for the members of the band, for which I don't begrudge them at all, because I'm between the dealing with the addiction issues with both Bolan and Hughes, and the disastrous tour, both with what happened in Jakarta, and then later just the last concert in Japan, and the disastrous UK leg of the tour, like all that stuff. It had to have just created a lot of bad memories that you're going to unfortunately attach to this album. But
yeah,
if things had gone differently and people were in a better place, I think this could have been a great direction that they were going into. Yeah, it's not like the Deep Purple of 3 years before that, or 3 years before that, but that's not what you want from a band. You want them to continue trying new things. You might not want them to get as experimental as like Lulu or something. You want them to branch out and try different things. And sometimes, Stormbringer was, a miss for some people, and some people liked it. This was the same thing. Oh no, Richie's gone. That's sacrilege. But the evolution was always there, and it was always going to be there.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of that with Uriah Heep too. When David Byron got fired and John Lawton comes in, it's like, well, if David Byron's not in the band, this isn't really Uriah Heep. And I'm like, it's Uriah Heep. Bands change, they evolve, members come and go. It's just the way it is. And it's interesting. Years ago, I wrote an album that I haven't redone yet, but it's called Twist of Fate. And the whole concept of what would your life be if you turned left in that moment instead of right, or if you didn't go through that stoplight for 2 seconds later, how would your life be completely different, based on this one decision? And I think about how if Richie hadn't have left, we wouldn't have Rainbow. We wouldn't have Perfect Strangers. What would Graham Bonnet's career have been? Would Bobby Rondinelli have ever joined Black Sabbath? I mean, all these things that come after one simple decision. And it's like, yeah, it would have been interesting to get another album with Tommy and Glenn. But also, we wouldn't have Perfect Strangers. We wouldn't have Equals One. We wouldn't have all the things that we do. So life just goes the way it goes, and it turns out the way it turns out. You can't argue it. You can't shape it into something it's not, no matter how much you want to. And you either accept that it happened, or you don't accept it, and you live a life of misery and missing out on potential things because, well, if Blackmore's not in the band, then I don't care about the band. Well, that's fine, but what are you cheating yourself out of?
Yeah, I would say with every member of Deep Purple, there's stuff they did outside of Deep Purple that I love, in some cases even more than Deep Purple. So I'd be ashamed, as unfortunate as it was of what happened to Roger. I can't imagine my life without Butterfly Ball.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly. That's been a huge part of my life, that album. And thinking about Whitesnake, Come and Get It is another one of my top albums. And to imagine a world where I knew in a parallel universe that album existed and not in mine, I'd be pretty pissed.
Oh yeah, I mean, Teaser, Private Eyes, Play Me Out, North Winds, the original Whitesnake solo album.
Yeah.
Saraband, Butterfly Ball, Clear Air Turbulence. Like, these are some of my all-time favorite albums. Rainbow Rising. None of that would exist if it was just the same guys just banging it out in the studio as Deep Purple the whole time.
And also, as musicians, you're not really growing. If you're only working with the same guys over and over and over, you're only growing together to some extent. And even the band will say, some of the magic of Deep Purple is the fact that they did all these outside projects, Jesus Christ Superstar, Butterfly Ball, Windows, all these things have kept them fresh and growing outside of the band. And then, like what you learn on a tour, you bring that into the band, and all those things influence your next project. And that's how bands grow. If you look at bands like Poison, and not to pick on Poison, but to use them as an example, they didn't do a lot of extraneous stuff. But you get, sorry, John, but you don't see a lot of growth from one album to another. It's pretty much, this is what they are, album after album after album. And I don't know their catalog really well, but from the stuff I do know, I don't really see a lot of changes in those bands.
And there aren't a lot of bands that have had the same lineup from the time when they started till like present.
Right.
There's only a couple I can even think of, and good for them. But there's usually going to be lineup changes for one reason or another. It's as simple as somebody just needs to take some time off, somebody passes away, but I mean, it happens.
Yeah, exactly. It's ironic. They started as the idea of roundabout, and they kind of somewhat turned into a roundabout, whether they meant to or
totally.
not.
The band is always, and I mean, I guess to some extent, most bands that have been around for 50 plus years are going to have a similar progression of just people leaving and everything. But yeah, the whole premise of the band stayed true, even though most people that were like into the band and fans didn't probably understand or appreciate that original intent.
Right.
Because it was, kind of just one of Chris Curtis's crazy ideas.
Yeah.
And
I think the idea
whether he was even technically in the band or not is he was just kind of there, and then boom, he was gone.
Well, I think the idea of Chris Curtis playing all the instruments, though, was more the problem. Like, I'll be the drummer. Oh, I'll be the singer, and I'll play guitar too, and then other people can join in. I'm like, what?
Makes live shows a little challenging.
Right. Yeah. All right. For this measure, I'm going to be the drummer.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into our song today.
Yes.
Really excited to dig into this because I absolutely love this track. Here it is, This Time Around by Deep Purple. It almost sounds like the guitar is a theremin. He's playing it so cleanly, bending moving the notes up and down without picking. Is he maybe playing with a slide? Or is that's John?
I don't think there's any Tommy on this track. I think it's just acoustic piano, synth, and vocal. So you're hearing, I think, just not the modulation, but the pitch wheel with on like a Moog or something.
It's very smooth.
Yeah, and I've talked about this before. There's something about this era, and I would pair this song along with like the Butterfly Ball Wizards Convention in having that mix. What I really enjoy is a mix of these like acoustic instruments, like this piano and synthesizers, that just has this very odd, interesting harmony together. And I don't mean harmony in the technical sense, but they work so well together. Having because you could have somebody coming along playing on a flute what he's playing on the synth, but it just wouldn't be quite the same. There's something just kind of otherworldly about the way that they blend together.
I would agree with that. And, you know, anybody that's been following any of my shows for a while knows that one thing I love about a song is the mood. And the song definitely has a mood that draws you in.
All mood.
Yeah.
All mood.
You know, there's a good chance that he's playing the synth line on his ARP Odyssey. And the ARP Odyssey had a lot of patches where as you go from one key to another, depending on how you physically key it, it will keep a sound going and just bend it up or down to the note that you're playing without sounding like a piano where you actually have to strike it to create the sound. It just kind of bends the note up and down. So there's a good chance actually that's what we're getting on the synth there.
Yep.
Let's talk about what we're getting here. I love Glenn's voice when he sings in this kind of whispery, almost dreamy like state.
I love the effect that's on his voice, which is, you know, his voice doesn't need any effects, but for this song, it is very appropriate because it just, this song has like a dreamlike quality to it. Like it always makes me think of them being in the studio really late at night, just like, it just sets a whole vibe, you know, like, you know, like I remember listening to this late at night when it's dark and it just, you know, even though it's a somber song and it's about him being in a dark place, it's just, it's also got this kind of like hopeful quality to it. You know, it's like, he's kind of lamenting how bad things are in his life right now, but yet, even though the lyrics are very vague, it does make you feel like there's hope around the corner. Like he hasn't given up all hope. He just knows that he's not in the greatest place.
I agree. And I do like the effect. It's a very slow phaser. I don't know about you, Nate, but as I've gone through these songs individually and really dug into them, I'm actually blown away by how much phaser this band used. You know, you don't really notice it that much here and there, but there's a lot. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There's definitely, Who Do We Think We Are probably has the crown for how much phaser there is, but yeah, it's used really good. I again, and I love the kind of like, for lack of a better term, that like bloopy sounding bass that he's doing. Like it's very like, it sounds very watery, you know what I mean? It's just got this great, it's this great undertone to the, you could have just done the song easily, just acoustic piano and vocals.
Right.
And it would have been great, but this just small little synth effects and highlights on it take it to a different place, and they set this atmosphere.
Yeah, I agree with you. I picture a very dimly but ambient studio, you know, dimly lit, not real bright, but just enough glow for them to record is how I've always felt this song. But I trying to figure out, is it John Lord that's playing synth bass, or is Glenn? I think they're both playing, because I feel like I'm hearing a pick and also that synth bass.
I think it's just the attack on the synth. I don't think there's anything on this part of the track other than John and Glenn. Glenn doing all the vocals and John doing all the piano and keys and synth.
So you don't think Glenn's playing along with him?
I don't think so.
Okay. Also,
but I see what you're saying, like that plucking kind of sound.
Also, John, the ever the king of layers. You know, if you listen to the song "Burn," especially that solo section that we really dug into, it's really amazing to me. Just when you think a song is finished, John's like, you know what, I got another idea. Let me throw one more layer in here, and As simple as this song is, there's actually a lot of layers that he's putting in. It sounds full and rich, but also simple at the same time. It is a pretty amazing sounding piece of music.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That high-pitched synth in the background that just adds that extra bit of spice to the song.
It sounds, and I don't think it is, but it sounds like a flute patch on like a mellotron or something.
It does, yeah. That
but
actually
I don't think
wouldn't
he was
surprise
using
me.
a mellotron.
You know, I always think about that, and I think, but what was in the studio? You know, was there a mellotron in the studio? It's like, oh, you know, let me play around with this and see, because I think I try not to just think about the standard gear that the musicians have. Like percussion, especially, like maybe somebody sees maracas sitting on the shelf, and like, oh, you know what, we should add a shaker track, you know, to it. And it's not necessarily something they would have done. So you're right. I don't think he had a mellotron, but there's always the possibility one was accessible.
But it has that, like,
it does have that quality,
analog feel of the tape.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. Also, you're right. That bass synth is really interesting. It's kind of it's like, it almost sounds like the Gumby band, you know, it just has that really gummy quality to it. But I like the way it works for the sound for this song. And the blend of tones, another beautifully mixed song as well. You know, that background synth being too high overpowers the song. The whole mood is gone.
And I think on its own, if you heard that bass tone, blah, 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 like if you heard that, you'd say, well, that's silly. You can't put that on this song.
Right.
But John Lord was like, I don't know if I don't know what his process was. I don't know if he heard it in his head and said, yep, that's what I'm going to do, and did it, or was just playing around with a few different patches and said, oh no, this one I think sounds really, I can make something. I don't know what the genesis was for that being added to this, and it shouldn't work.
Yeah,
but it's just awesome,
and it's very active for a song that's so kind of gentle. The bass is incredibly active.
Yep.
Yeah. They're really building up the phaser on this, and it's just you know, they're so good at taking a song, starting it simple, building it up, and even with a song as simple as this, they're still finding ways to make it interesting as it goes along. And that's one thing I've always loved about Purple, as I've discovered more and more of that through doing this show. It just amazes me how they always find something else. And I wonder, do they start with the whole package and then back it off? Or is it just like, okay, we're going to do another verse. What can we do to this to make it different?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're probably one of the best bands ever for just having those subtle, slow builds over the course of a song. I don't know. I don't know how I would love, of all the songs that they've done, this is one I would love to have just seen the process for how they made the decisions. And it was probably done very quickly, and it didn't have as much thought in it as we'd like to think, but it just works so well. I think it's maybe just that some of that instinct that they have. You've got that, like we said, that bloopy bass and the mellotron sounding flutes, and then there's something else that's like kind of like a subtle pad almost in the middle. So it from best I can tell, 3 synthesizer tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And what always strikes me too is how tight it is when they go da dun dun dun. Like it's like they were lined up on a grid in
Right.
You know, like there's no like part where they're even slightly off. It's just perfect. So I almost wonder, is he playing the piano with one hand and the synth, or that part of the synth with another?
Yeah.
Because I don't know how else you would do that. Obviously, they've got great sense of rhythm and everything, but without like some sort of click track or something. Maybe there was just a subtle click track that we don't hear. I don't know. But
well,
it's very tight.
I don't know if bands were recording with clicks yet. I'm not sure exactly when that started. This would have been recorded in 74 or 75. So it's possible. But even with that, you still have to be on the click. And I mean, the precision that they're playing with is just stunning. Also, we haven't really talked about it, but the piano playing is amazing on this song.
Yeah. There's nothing technically advanced about it, but yeah, it's just perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very melodic.
One of the few John Lord things I can play on the piano. Not as well as him, but
right. It's very melodic. It flows very well. It's really pretty, you know, underneath this ethereal vocal, which I think is just this is some of the singing from Glenn that I love the best. Also, when you saw Glenn, did he play this live? It seems like this would be one he would do.
No, sadly, I've always wished he would, but no, it's nope.
It might be kind of a painful one, considering that this was an anchor song for him for that time, like what it represents, or it might just be too difficult to do live.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, it doesn't seem like it should be anything too tricky to do live. I don't know if he just doesn't do it because there's probably just more other Purple songs from his era that would, you know, make more sense for him to do in a set list.
Well, since it's all done on keyboard, though, you'd have to replace something with a guitar to make it work live, you know, unless you boiled it down to just piano and bass, you know.
I mean, they did it live in Deep Purple, so I mean, there's got to be a way they can, you know, it wouldn't be 100% like this, but I think you can make it work. I just don't think there's a ton of people clamoring to hear this one.
Well, there is that, yeah. And before I say it's not possible to play live, as Ian Pace proved me wrong on the, what was it, the You Fool No One episode, I'm not going to say anything could not be done live ever again. Let's get back to the song. You know what? It's almost like if you've ever watched a horror movie where they have ghosts whispering in the background. The delay on his voice with that flange almost sounds ghostly.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's very and he's very uncharacteristically restrained on the song in a way that I appreciate, and I think his vocals are used very well. And he does this little was right about to get to, which is like the only kind of really soulful interjection he does beyond what is just the song itself.
Yeah, and this is the Glenn I love. When you get to the whoop, whoop, whoop Glenn, I'm not so much a fan of that. But this kind of stuff, and even the little, you know, that we're going to get to, I like that because it feels very much like it's in the moment. Sometimes
it's very emotional.
Yeah. Sometimes people do that and it sounds strategic, like I need to put something in here, so I'll just go, And other times you can tell when somebody's just in the moment and really feeling what the sounds that they're making, you know.
Yeah, totally.
And that's why I could never be a singer, because I'm I guess too self-conscious to put something in there even if I'm feeling it and be afraid that it just sounds planted. You know?
It takes a lot of confidence, but I always imagine, like, what would it be like if you could sing like this? probably would have a lot of confidence.
Yeah, yeah. If I had this voice, absolutely.
If when I sang it sounded like this, I'd be like going, I'd be throwing that in everywhere because it's just, I mean, it's the voice. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. This part actually seems like it would fit perfectly on the Butterfly Ball, going from one song into another, because that album flows pretty well, a lot of times nonstop. I mean, a lot of it just blends one song into another.
I'm specific, I never thought of it before, but I'm specifically thinking of the transition into Sir Maximus Mouse.
Yes, that's the one.
I can't remember what the song is before that. Is it Aranea or something? Or no.
Oh crap! I can't think of it. I gotta look.
Well, whatever it is, the song right before Sir Maximus Mouse, the transition is very similar to this.
Yeah, and I think it's the sound of the background synth and just kind of that ethereal, ethereal sound of the voice and the flange just blending. But yeah, it really does feel very Butterfly Ballish, I will say.
It's Waiting is the song.
Oh, Waiting, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm in this day. I mean, who isn't concerned about dropping cheese prices?
I know.
In fact, dairy on the whole at this point is just questionable.
But, yeah, it's very true.
I love the feel of this. It just, the rhythm, the riff and the rhythm is fantastic, coming in with just that gentle build that is so common in a rock song, that bum 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 bum. But the pitches that Ian Pace uses on the toms, using those smaller toms, really give it a color that you don't normally hear, because normally it's floor toms or snare and floor tom, and it's usually low end. So I like that choice.
Yeah, and this whole thing to me is just one of the things I really like about this. Is it's to me, this is one of the heaviest things that Deep Purple has ever done, coming from one of the softest things they've ever done.
Right.
But it still has that like groove, and of course Ian is the driving force behind that. Mm-hmm. But it's just this one simple, Tommy will throw in some licks and some things later on, but nothing like a proper guitar solo per se, just kind of some little licks he throws over the main riff there. But it's just to me, it's like this whole song lyrically is like Glenn's turmoil, and it's leading up to this as like the crescendo is this, and it's said without words, it's said without lyrics. It's this musical kind of representation of the turmoil that he's feeling.
Right. No, I absolutely agree with that. And it is interesting because I think what we're hearing from Tommy is, had there been lyrics to this, what he would have played behind the vocals, because he's, like Richie would do these little things in the background, like in between the lines, these little solo beats. Tommy was more, I'm just going to add some color to it. He a lot of times wouldn't solo behind a vocal, but he would just add a note or two or a little sound effect. And I think, had there been vocals to this, I don't think, was this, this wasn't the song. No, I'm thinking of Coronarius Rettig, the one that there was supposed to be vocals to, that David just couldn't get down to the studio to sing, which I still to this day would love to know what those would have been, what that would have sounded like.
I would love to hear that song with vocals, but I'm glad they didn't put vocals on this. Like, I think it says more than it would say with vocals. What are you going to add to it? It's
right.
Just, it's perfect. And it's a very simple, just A-B arrangement. Well, I guess there is a C section. Well, no, I guess it's where they do the stops, but it's essentially the same thing. They're just putting stops in there.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because Deep Purple, Ian Gillan defines Deep Purple as an instrumental band that he adds vocals to. And I get where he's coming from, because it's not just, hey, we wrote a riff, we wrote a chorus riff, we wrote a bridge riff, like a typical rock band. So I get what he means by that. But when you think in terms of instrumental songs, other than Mark I, because we didn't get any instrumental songs during the first Mark II era. And then we really don't until like Son of Alaric would be the closest, even though Ian makes a brief appearance on that song. They really weren't an instrumental song band. So this is kind of a rare treat where the musicians get to show off without having to leave a lane for a vocalist.
Yep. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Is it just me, Nate, or does that part, that last lick there from Tommy, does that kind of give you a sign of hope?
Like the harmonies between the two guitars, like that.
Well, just the line that da 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 da. It kind of gives me that sense, like, what, everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah, it's got this dark sound to the first part of the riff, but da na na na. Yeah, it's like this positive kind of feeling to it. It's a weird mixture of darkness and hope in these two songs.
And that's where you said this instrumental part of the song represents the struggle of Glenn. And you think about that, you're going to have your highs and lows. You're going to have your moments of, I'm going to make it through this. And then you're going to have your, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not going to live through this. And then you have your moment, it's such an up and down emotional battle. I really feel like we're getting that in this song.
Yeah, it's very emotional. Like the music, the lyrics of the first half, and then the music of this part is just very emotional.
Yeah, I feel like I read a lot into instrumentals, being somebody who writes a lot of instrumental music. I think of what I put into it and meanings and all that, and I try to find that, I guess, in others. But here it's almost like screaming at me, here's what we're saying.
Well, and I don't know if this wasn't attached to this time around, would it have that same, out of context,
right,
would it have that same feeling? I don't know.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, it's hard to say. That part is so wild. I mean, Tommy always does these multiple layers, which I appreciate. I don't know. I've said on the show before, I don't know if it's that he's just such a musical genius that he would lay something down spontaneously and then immediately know what he was going to put over it, or if it's something that he sat down and worked out. I have a feeling it's the former.
I think so too. I think he just had this sense. And it's funny you said genius, right, as I was thinking genius, and that's not like a term I throw around lightly. But the whole the thing where he goes da 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 da, and then the last two is da 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 da, like on the other guitar, is just the fact that he didn't do it the first two times. It's such a simple little thing, but it works to build this instrumental into a different direction. He could have very easily just mirrored what he was doing the entire time
Right.
on that guitar, but it's almost like he's just like, I just don't know how conscious he was of that decision. Like, did it just occur to him late? Did he want it to be that way? Did he record it that way and they cut out the first 2 times? I mean, who knows? But it whatever it is, it's either genius in the mixing or in the overdubbing or the overlaying, whatever it is. It's just, but it makes it so much, it gives it so much more impact than if it hadn't been there or if it had been there the entire time.
Right. And I feel like we do get a lot of that on this album. I don't know much of his work outside of this album very well. I mean, I've heard what you've played on your show, but I haven't really sat down myself and listened to much of what he's done. But this is the stuff that makes me so sad that he died so young, because what would we have gotten from him at this age? I mean, he's what, mid-20s at this point?
I mean, he was 25 when he died, so he wouldn't have been 25 yet. He would have been 24, I think, when they did this.
24 years old. I mean, but when you think about it, look at Mandrake Root and how young Richie was. I mean, the genius that these guys had at such a young age. You know, you'd think that it would take 30, 40 years of being musicians to be able to pull off some of the stuff that they did. But I mean, what could we have gotten? You know, and I know I talked about the twist of fate concept, but this is one of those ones where I think, man, we really lost somebody who had some amazing creative talent.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't be a sadder story with this guy. You know, like, what would he have gone on to do?
Yeah. Now, I want to ask you too: is it, being that you know more about guitar than I do, when you strike a note and you hold the fret with one finger and you tap with the other finger to go like da-da-da-da-da-da, is there a name that, because it is tapping, but it's not what I think of tapping when people use like 3 or 4 fingers.
Yeah, hammer on and pull off.
Is that what it's called? Okay.
Yeah. And I guess you could call that a trill, where you're going with one finger, but yeah, it's like a hammer on is da, and a pull off is down.
Right. Yeah, that's
where
something
you're just basically.
Yeah, that's something that's very common for Richie too. If you listen to a lot of his live solos, he'll do that stuff. Maybe not so much in songs, but when he's doing solos, or maybe like the end of Mandrake Root, when the band stops and he just kind of goes off into his insanity, you know, which I love. I you know, it would have been interesting to hear Tommy do Mandrake Root and to hear him do, you know, his half of the song, you know, 10 minutes of just going off into the music. And I really wonder what he would have played on something like that, because that's not quite his wheelhouse.
Right. Yeah, that it would have. Yeah. Did they? I don't think they did any Mark I songs with Tommy.
Yeah, I don't think so. They wouldn't have even been doing Hush then. Although hearing David,
they didn't really bring that back until the 80s, right?
Yeah, hearing David sing Hush might have been interesting.
Oh, gee, who knows what he would have done to it? Hush, hush, I want to get into your pants, baby.
I got to say this before we go back to the song. So last night, I was recording Knocking at Your Back Door with a guest, and it never really struck me how David Coverdale that song really is lyrically, because Ian actually does use the line to get in her pants, and I thought, it didn't dawn on me that he actually said that. Because there's no double entendre there. That is just straightforward what David Coverdale would say.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, good stuff.
In that one part, it always strikes me. They go dum 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 dum, and then on the second one, dum 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 dum, and you hear the bing. And it's the string ringing out, like, and it sounds like above the, you know, between the tuning peg and the hell you call it.
It almost sounds like a harmonic, you know, like
it's basically like, it's like if you, like, you know, if you strum across it. And again, it would be so easy to have edited out. And I love when little things like that happen and they make the choice not to make it squeaky clean and polished. It's supposed to be like this dead silence, but you hear this tiny ring out, and it gives this like level of character. Sure, it's completely unintended. It would be one of those things that'd be almost impossible to duplicate, Like
Right.
you couldn't really do it again on command.
Yeah.
It's not even like it's a pinch harmonic that he hit accidentally or anything. It's like this really weird thing where he didn't mute the string 100%, but it's just this element of the song that always gets my attention in like a really good way. And I hope it's not one of those things that when they heard afterwards, like, we should have edited that out because it's just so great.
Yeah, and I feel like today they would.
Oh yeah, I would if it was my song. About that's not supposed to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would edit it out, but it shouldn't be edited out. It's great.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, you talked in this week's episode of the Deep Purple podcast about Ted McKenna's squeaking his drum pedal and how it added to the song. I always thought that was an overdub track of him hitting the bell on a closed hi-hat, but you might be right. That might be a squeak from the bass drum pedal. But it is sometimes those happy accidents that can just add a little touch to make it interesting. I also heard him. I don't know if he was switching positions on the toggle switch, but I heard a little just crunch of something in there in the second half of that, and I'm like, those are the things that I love because it's musicians being alive, playing music, not programmed, not MIDI, recording to tape. You know, what got caught.
It could also just be like a really little bit of like movement on the strings. Like it could just be that like repositioning his fingers.
Right.
We do hear a great in is it You Full No One where Richie does the little toggle. And then the tone of the guitar changes. And it's like another thing where most times you'd be like, no, let's redo that section because I forgot to switch the toggle for the first one and then I remembered for the second one, but it's so great that it's there.
Yeah, and again, you know, if that was a happy accident, then it worked. I think my favorite of all that I could ever cite is the squeaks in Death Alley Driver during the solo as he moves his hand up and down the fretboard. You just hear it squeak, and it just makes me smile every single time I hear that.
Yep, it's great stuff.
It is. I'm trying to remember what Jimi Hendrix song ends like that. Is it Foxy Lady?
Maybe. I think Foxy Lady starts like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird when you think about it. There's part of me that says I should not like this song because it is very repetitive. I mean, it really is. But I think they do enough to make it interesting between the energy Ian Pace is putting into it, all the sounds that Tommy's throwing into it. I think it's interesting enough, and the mood, of course, to just keep me engaged the whole time. But if you were to look at this on paper, it would probably look like a very boring, repetitive song.
Yeah, and I think it's all there's the little things that we noticed in there that's going on that are just kind of, for lack of a better term, technical flaws, but not in a bad way. So those things are kind of making it interesting. But it's really all in the overdubs because it's a very staccato, everyone playing in unison, which is very unusual for Deep Purple. But all the little things that Tommy puts in over it, there's not like a proper guitar solo, but there's a lot of interesting little guitar fills and licks and little harmonies that he throws in there that make it interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that I love that Tommy does in this song and is just hanging a note. You know, he'll just play a note and let it hang there. And I remember, of course, I'm a ways away from getting to Infinite yet, but in the song Birds of Prey, I remember in the documentary that they did of the making of the album, Bob Evans is telling Steve to hold this note as long as you can. And he's just picking the same note, over and over again. And at some point, Steve's like, I can't hang on to this any longer. And I'm like, That's such an interesting thing that, I mean, literally, you could physically sit there and pluck that note all day. What is it about that that's making you want to move on to another note, or to do something different? Why is it that you can't play that? You know, it's such a fascinating thing, that human quality. But in this song, Tommy is just perfectly happy to just hit a note and let it hang in the air and let it just be atmospheric and not be a shredder on this song, or at least in those parts. Like, I think it's so tempting to just be expressive and play, but he's perfectly happy to let it hang there.
And that's, I think, why he was a genius, is that he had not only the ability, but he had the maturity in his playing, even from a very young age, way before this, to be able to have the ability to do almost whatever he wanted, but yet do these really tasteful things that were much, much more memorable. And that, you know, like when he does that one thing where he goes, wow, and he holds it for, it's probably a like whole note. It might even be like a extended whole note, like over 2 bars rather than one. And then he comes in with the second time with a second note on the other guitar, wow, and then he's harmonizing these two together. It's so simple, but I can't imagine anyone else even conceiving of to do that. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just do a ripping guitar solo over this super heavy song?
Yeah, exactly. And there's something about his style and the way that I always talk with guitarists about the way they feel music, or the way that they make me feel music. And I think this is, for me, one of my favorite performances from Tommy, because he really does make the song. You know, obviously, as a drummer, I love the fills and you know, all that. But if it wasn't for Tommy, this song would be a skeleton.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting stuff. Yeah. Well, I could see why it's your favorite song for sure, Nate. Definitely up there on my list. I hate picking favorites because there's so many incredible songs to choose from.
You said you weren't going to say that word anymore.
I did. I'm going to have to bleep myself out now.
I have to say it because it is my favorite.
Yeah.
There's just something about the mood of the song. It's just, it's been my favorite for a really, really long time, since before I got this album, to be honest with you, because I think we talked about this a few episodes ago with Simon, which is I heard this and Getting Tighter for the first time on the Ultimate box set, back when this album itself, Come Taste the Band, was not. I'm surprised I found the Ultimate, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like that was just out there, but I couldn't find this album. I remember this being a chase for me. And when I finally found it, I was like, great, I get to hear all the songs on that album where I've only heard a couple and I really love them. And this was my favorite on the box set, and it was my favorite on this album, and it's my favorite Deep Purple song. So by that extension, it must be one of my favorite songs of all time.
I would have to agree with that. And as much as, especially as a drummer, as much as I love songs like Drifter or I Need Love, because they're very interesting from a drum perspective, as a composer, as somebody who enjoys classical music, as somebody who enjoys just the mood of the song, I have to say this is a really amazing track. The whole, and I'm really glad they put them together. You know, I think the whole experience is a real journey. And even taking aside the story of it, even if I didn't know what was behind it, just the listening experience of it, by the end of it, you feel like you've been through something.
Yes. And it's like the old trope of, you know, it's the notes you don't play. It could very easily have ruined this by just being like don't
Yeah. Right.
You know, just throwing in a solo for, okay, now it's the turn for the bass to do it. And it's just, there's so much emptiness in the song that is why it works so well.
You know, it's funny. I think about different guitarists that might have played it. Of course, we always our go-to is always Yngwie, right? And thinking,
of course.
I was just thinking about the movie Shock 'Em Dead, because my friend went and saw Tracy Lords yesterday at the con. I was thinking about the movie Shock 'Em Dead because that's my favorite Tracy Lords movie. It's so ridiculous. It's about this guy that makes a nerd who's just picked on all the time. And he makes a pact with the devil to be this amazing guitarist, but to appease the devil, he's got to kill people. He can't eat regular food. He has to sort of suck the soul out of people. And why that benefits the devil, I have no idea. I don't really know what he's getting out of the bargain.
He just wants bad things to happen.
Right,
He's the devil.
but he's this unbelievable shredder. So think of like Crossroads, right? It's kind of similar to Crossroads. And
in a way.
It is like way. Yeah. So he will have this song where he's like, just putting in these ridiculous things. And I kind of think it would be like that. Dun, dun, dun. Just these ridiculous things that
Yngwie
you put
would
in
be
there.
like, oh, there's a problem with this song. There's this space of about half a second where there's no sound. You know how many notes I could put in that?
Exactly, yeah.
I could put at least 64 notes in that half a second.
Yeah, it's the magic, and that's why I do find cover versions interesting, because I love the idea of different interpretations of a song. How does this song make you feel? What do you get out of it? And what do you take from the original? But I think as a song like this, a song that's based in such feeling, you really have to at least be respectful of that and keep that to the song. Take a song. I remember when I first moved to Vegas and I was walking down the strip like 2-3 times a week, and I would hear, there's no space you can go on the Vegas Strip and not hear some kind of music playing. And they've got a blanket license with BMI and ASCAP. They can play pretty much whatever they want. They just pay a fee, and everything in the catalog is accessible. So I remember hearing White Flag by Dido, which is a very emotional song, and they put a drum beat to it, like a club mix. And I'm like, why would you take a song that's all emotion? They did the same thing with In the Air Tonight. Why would you take a song that is pure emotion, pure feeling and experience, and make this a danceable song? It just makes absolutely no sense. How are you going to want to dance to In the Air?
Yeah, it's my favorite dance song.
Yeah, that song really kicks. But that, like, taking that concept to a song like this, it just doesn't make sense to redo it if you're going to destroy the whole essence of the song.
Yep, there are, but as long as there's been music, there's been people that want to do that sort of thing. Yeah.
I just don't see that being a commercially acceptable idea, But then again, hey, it got played on the Vegas Strip, so
they're not playing many of my songs on the Vegas Strip.
Very
probably
few.
Not playing Ode to G on the Vegas Strip.
They're not playing a lot of Mental Sauna out there in Vegas, that's for sure. Well, Nate, as always, I love having you on the show. I look very forward to our next one, which, if I recall which song it is a very interesting track for Deep Purple.
I think I might remember.
Yeah, we'll have you back for the Bananas album.
I can't believe that's the next one I signed. Really? There was nothing in between that I signed up for?
Yeah. I'm actually, where I'm at in real time, I'm actually getting ready to get started on the Bananas album. So that's kind of where I'm at, just because no one's stopping me from recording podcasts every day. But always a pleasure to have you on, my friend. Guys.
Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you. Check out Nate on the Deep Purple podcast with John. John's been on the show many times. I've been on the Deep Purple podcast. Nate and John have been on the Haskincast podcast. They've been on Uriah Heep the Magician's podcast. It's just pure nepotism. That's all we do in this family of shows. But go check out the Deep Purple podcast. Link is in the show notes. We will be back with another episode in the next episode. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thanks for listening.